It is rightly said, we won't sit idly when crime is committed in real world. So why should we when it happens in cyberspace? So looking forward to an interesting debate. Clear and present danger. Cyber wars will target critical infrastructure. So I would like to welcome our moderator, Saurabh Isar, Chief Executive Officer of the AI-driven Digital Risk Management Enterprise CloudSec. He has managed horizontal and vertical business portfolios across US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, bringing together the ecosystem of sales, marketing, delivery, alliances, and advisors to deliver value to his customers. His areas of expertise including cybersecurity, machine learning, infrastructure, and automation, to name a few. We have with us our panelist, Sachin Burman, Director of NCIIPC. We welcome you, sir. We have with us our panelist, Somnath Kundu, Senior Manager Security at National Thermal Power Corporation Limited. He has been involved in the engineering of many thermal power plants as well as factory testing of many DCS systems. Finally, we have with us Sudarshan Rajgopal, Information Security Leader for Shell India Markets Private Limited, a security evangelist and information technology leader with over 2 decades in global markets, specializing in managing large programs and team, business strategy, infrastructure, and application security, design, and re-engineering, to name a few. Over to you, sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, first of all, thanks a lot to everyone for attending. Earlier we were thinking we'll probably need to have some humor during our session just to keep everyone excited after the lunch, but looking at the crowds, I think we are okay. You can't really sleep if you're standing, right? So, clear and present danger, that's the topic. So I Googled it and I knew about it. There was a very nice movie by Harrison Ford, which I saw when I was young. I still am young, by the way. So is everyone here. I don't know about you guys. So I think it's very apt, especially considering the geopolitical situation today. A very apt word, I think Dr. Burman also talked about it in the previous session. So what we'll be doing today is a couple of things. We will dig a little deeper into what critical infrastructure, some of the things we talked about earlier, what it means, what are the threat perception, right? What are the vectors, the use cases? What have we done about it? What do we need to do about it? How can we contribute? Me as from the vendor community, you as the community, both in a personal as well as professional side. And then we'll probably open it up for some questions, right? So I think we all kind of understand what is the threat facing us, right? A series of successive events choreographed in the right way, probably taking out electricity, power, water, communication, transport can pretty quickly bring a country to its knees, right? That's critical infrastructure. That's what we are talking about. So I guess the first question I would pose to the panel, right, is what is the threat perception, right? What do we see in terms of what is going on? What are some of the use cases, some of the attacks which are coming in, right? And what is it that we really need to protect, right? So, Tom, maybe you want to go first?
So I'll be the first one to start. So, am I audible?
I don't know.
The mic isn't. So the threat perception as of now, it seems has changed in the last 1 or 2 years. After the introduction of the Industrial 4.0, the Industry Revolution, and a whole lot of thrust to the digitalization initiatives taking place in our critical infrastructure areas. Before that, the threat perspective was a bit different, where it was not fully, but partially air-gapped environment with only a few connectivity to the enterprise in the form of a universal translation of data through universal gateways or whatever it is. But with the Industry 4.0 and with the advent of this cloud and the industrial Internet of Things, all of a sudden, the enterprise requires a huge bunch of data, for their business analysis part. And this data is to be transferred into our enterprise and yet be safe and secured. Initially, the DCS, let me say the DCS is the digital control system. I should say it as the industrial control system, ICS. So ICS was not connected as such directly, and we had the, very well said, as it was already said in the previous panel discussion also, a defense in depth structure in NTPC. So in the defense in depth structure, we had a lot of protections, we have zone segmentations, we have individual edge devices hardening, then we had the defense in depth in the form of different protocols in the different layers of the ICS. Then we had a lot of introductions, which I'll come later. But in the latest scenario, we're finding the main obstacle is everybody who is working in a digitalized environment will have a cloud-based license, a cloud-based solution, and these things are opening up a whole new gamut of security, cyber security risk for the critical infrastructure. As of now, as we can tell you in NTPC, we are a strict no to these cloud solutions, and we are pushing for on-premise solutions equivalent to these cloud solutions with licenses. And again, in that one, I don't know, the starting is a bit, might be depressing. The people who are very matured with the cloud solutions are not so matured for on-premise solutions, be it any kind of a solution. And this paradigm shift is going on. These peoples are evolving because we are forcing them to evolve. In NTPC, it is always a stand that we will wait for the development to take place, but the development should take place. And as far as the old legacy systems are considered, should I tell all those things we have done, safety aspects?
Yeah. So what I was thinking was maybe we can finish one on this threat perception, and then on the next round.
Okay, fine. Then
I'd love to hear about that.
Then I can transfer to you.
Yeah. Right. Sudarshan, you want to go next?
Okay. All right. I think, I was just thinking about, I was listening to the previous conversation, and I might have a little longish answer to look at it from the perception perspective. It was very funny, late 90s, early 2000, most of us who were young at that time and who still are, would recognize that we had selling security was the biggest challenge. IT security was the biggest challenge. There came a time in 2001, people would say, why do I need firewall? I don't need a firewall. And then there was this PIX and Checkpoint and WebSense and all. You sell them and they'll say, I'm secure. I don't need anything beyond that. You'd go and tell there is, firewall, you need different kind of firewall, or you need something else beyond this. And hey, man, if I put on firewall, I'm secure. Don't come to me. Don't sell me anything. But, shift to 2019, when you see the panelist here talking about the maturity level and, giving importance to pen testing or red teaming in the previous session, or we talking about security itself is a long journey to look at it. The way I look at perception, and that's why a bit of longish answer, perception is still the same. What it was for the IT system at that point in time versus what it is for IoTs or these kind of systems, the PLCs, the PCDs at this point in time is probably, for me as a personal opinion, is similar. The only difference, and which is a major difference, is those days you did not have scripts, so you did not have script kiddies. You had to work your way through, even if it was directory traversal, you needed to use your brains, but today you have that data already available. You have 10,000 scripts which are already available at a click of a button. So you can see if you can transpose them over here and look at it if they will work and something goes high or something is low. That's one part of it. The other part of it is, I think, there's a definitive threat perspective from a geopolitical area, the way you look at the countries are right now. So you have a trade war going between two major countries. There is escalations of various mechanisms in various countries. Our country is also going through something like this. And then there was a news that, one country hacks into the other country. So this also is a huge area of target. So this increases your threat perception and tells you what might go wrong or what might not. Now, the basic amenities, what we have, thankfully, India is not that there where your water is also connected to smart electricity and stuff like that. But if you look at it, telephone is now an emergency. I mean, it is an essential commodity. You cannot have no signals. Airtel was there next to our booth, so you might check with them. And that infrastructure, if it goes down, like I remember the July incident in Bombay when the rain happened, everyone had DR preparedness, everyone was gung-ho about it, but they realized that I have no electricity, my phones does not work, then I'm doomed. I can't remotely work. So those are the kind of things which becomes reality, and they can be targeted. And the third point, which I would think is from the insider threat, what you have. That's also a huge thing with the competition increasing, people getting disgruntled, people thinking they're more capable, work pressures increasing, lifestyles getting changed. I think there is huge pressure from insider threat, which also increases the level of your threat perception the way it would be. And I'll end up with this, but there's a huge list. The other thing is the competitive, the competitive world, what we have. So the espionage, what you have, the competition which gets into your area or you get into their area, and these malpractices, they also can increase your threat perception. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Sudarshan. Dr. Burman.
All right, these guys are heavy, okay? So what? but just a quick one. I'm not a doctor. I didn't do my PhD because InfoSec is not rocket science. All right. Now, when we talk about threat perception, let's understand that the infra that we're talking about, or the infra on which there is a threat perception, is something essentially the technology is not owned by me. Right? The technology, when I say technology, I'm seeing it from a national perspective. We don't own more than 1 or 2% of the technology that we use. So by design, the systems are insecure. And I'm talking about this from the critical infra perspective. I don't have a handle on what could or could not go wrong. And I don't have a handle on that because the OEMs or the manufacturers themselves don't have a handle. I mean, if you look at any product, starting off from Microsoft or any Linux variant or anything, has got a potential for vulnerabilities. So if the owner or the maker or the manufacturer doesn't know what could go wrong, you can't expect me as a customer to understand what could go wrong. Right? So the third point is the geopolitical issue, which has been covered, and I don't really have anything to add to that. We have to have, and we do have a clear understanding that there is a multitude of threats. There are multiple threat vectors, but the reason why agencies like us have been created is essentially to integrate the ecosystem, to give you guys a platform where if there are threats or where if there are vulnerabilities or if anything is happening, because it's not just a threat, it is VTR, vulnerabilities, threats and risks. Right? So anyone who's done that entire cycle of VTR and who's got an understanding of what is happening and also realizes despite everything, I've been hit. And the previous session was all about breach response. So if we take all that into perspective, we take all that into account, the threat is real, it exists, it has manifested itself, and it is for us to protect our interests and ensure that we are not hit in a manner that we take too long to recover or where we get seriously impacted.
No, thanks a lot. So I think this great points. I think I'll quickly summarize. So I think we heard about the historical view. So how the scripts have become available now, the insider threat, right? We heard about corporate espionage. We also heard some talk about how cloud is opening up a whole new can of worms. How the preference for on-premise, right, makes a lot of sense. And of course, we heard Bhavan sir talked about that we don't own the tech, even the OEMs don't have a handle on what's going on, right? So, and how the government is kind of facilitating the integration of the ecosystem. And yeah, absolutely right. It has manifested itself. We all know about Union Bank of India 2-3 years ago. We all know about WannaCry, practically brought down the Andhra Pradesh police, West Bengal utilities, and so on. So some good examples are there to kind of make us smell the coffee and wake up. So now let me switch gears, right? Let me talk a little bit about what are the steps which we have all taken. What all have we done till now in our own respective worlds? More importantly, what has worked and what has not worked, right? I think those learnings will be very valuable. So, Sudarshan, you want to go next?
Okay, so now there's kind of confusion, right? So he say, and I think Sachin is right when he says that 1 or 2% of it is critical infrastructure, and we have no control on that. So if I can do something on that, I don't think. So let me come back to my industry, which is oil and gas or energy industry, and tell you from how I would look at it and whatever I can say on that.
That'll be
right?
perfect. That was the intent. Yeah.
So I think let me go back to my 4 or 5 points which I made of. One is from the we follow defense in depth module, which was spoken about in the previous session. And that is anyway mandatory. So you have to have your checks and balances right in place. Right from the conceptualization of a product or a project, there is security involved. There's with the architects, the security team sits in. They derive, they challenge, they create the controls, they design the controls, and then they look at it when the operation starts, and then say, okay, we can go ahead or not. Now, depending on the criticality of the project or the product, the team would actually suggest to go for a pen testing or similar kind of a test. And then the way we work out on that is something which we see is these are all traceable. These are all forensic ready. So in case of a breach, which was said very nicely, that if you're sitting and thinking you'll never be breached, you are living in a la-la land, which is true. So in case of something like that, we have the incident team, which comes in, kicks in, and it traces it out to the endpoint, curtails it, quarantines it, and takes care of the breaches that way. Then we have a monitoring team which looks at anomalies of the data which is flowing in, flowing out from a security perspective. And in case we have anything in there, these people also alert us, and the relevant team will kick into place. That's one part of it. Now, you have the insider threat. We also have a lot of education happening or awareness programs happening with the users, where we go and talk to the users and say, hey, you know what, these are certain hygiene issues which you need to take care of. Then we have certain specific programs which are running to take care of the infrastructure or of the applications or of the legacy systems which are vulnerable, to how to curtail it or how to fix them well in advance or well in time, and see to it that the things which cannot be for various reasons are monitored very closely. In case of a breach, you can pull the plug as soon as possible, and it will have minimal business impact. So these are various things which are looking at. Also, the employees are aware of any malpractices happening in or around from a insider threat perspective, and alert the relevant team to look at it. So these are a few steps which we have. And also when you go to a hostile country, or you have regulations in different countries where you can't take data out or in, you are taught about it, you are made aware of it, you have a mandatory program which you go through, and then you as an individual you work through it. So these are few of the programs which I can think we have listed out, and we are working on these.
So just one follow-on question. So that was about what has worked. I would love to hear a little bit about what has not worked. Good learnings for everyone else.
I think everything which works also does not work. So, I mean, I like this perspective, because we usually talk about success, and success comes with multiple failures, which we never see. So that's why I like this perspective. I think in all the areas where we are saying we have challenges. So what does not work is the process is not followed because of time pressure, because of business pressure. And understand, we are an energy company, and our primary business is not IT. So a lot of people are surprised when we had a booth here, right? So IT is an enabler. IT is a supporting firm. Now, they don't care if you say, you need to have 15,000 checks before you go in this. I'll buy a cloud. I don't care what they give, what they don't give. My dhanda should happen. That's how they look at it, and they have money. So these things, when we go through these kind of pressure, it does not work. It comes as a top-down approach. So it fails. Insider threat, usually it's very difficult because by nature of human right now, we trust everyone. And that trust is breached and you don't want to believe it till you see it in the open. So that does not work at times. And then there are smart kiddies who would put in certain time bombs inside your system, certain abuses, what they can do with their privileges, what has been granted. Those are certain things which have failed. But yes, having said that, these are monitored and we curtail it or we close it at the fastest gap what we can have with the minimal impact. I hope that answers.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, Saurabh, I will be a bit detailed in this one. So, as far as these practices, what we have adopted, one is the defense in depth, obviously, and putting IPSS in place in the perimeters and unidirectional transfer of data to the enterprise LAN. Other than these, we are trying to evolve ourselves and think ahead. As Sarah has rightly told, and the previous panel also told, that you cannot say that you cannot never be breached. Well, you can be breached at any point of time. So let's, what we do a practice in our operation management is a preventive check. So let's be preventive and preemptive in thinking that we have introduced two-factor authentication. We are now forcing all our industrial industrial network vendors to go for hardware MACsec ports. We are pushing our industrial control system vendors to go for port-based MAC filtering. I will be a bit detailed in that one. Suppose I have two operational units running in one of my commercial plant, and suppose one of the motor of one of the unit need not talk to the motor of another unit. So I need to cut down that communication. This is an unnecessary communication with an unnecessary service. So we are tracking down all these unnecessary services, forcing our DCS vendors to cut down these services in the form of port-based MAC filtering or whatever it is. Then we are going for MAC binding and all those stuffs, regular stuffs we are doing on it. One thing what Sundar has rightly put out is conceptualization, engineering and implementation. It is a long path and we miss out on those paths in certain point of time. So although I am conceptualizing a perfect system as of now, what is called the state of art, and I am trying to engineering it accordingly with the latest state of the art network devices, secure devices available, maybe at the point of implementation or after implementation, due to the lack of awareness among all our individuals, as he has rightly told, that IT is already a matured environment where already all the IT guys are matured and they are well aware of how to work on it. But we people who are hardcore industrial sector people, we are not so much aware of IT. So maybe that gap can create an anomaly into the system. But definitely I would like to put up 2-3 aspects in this one. Recently, we have successfully commissioned a remote operation of our Koldam plant, which is around 400 kilometers from our Delhi operation center. It was a big challenge for us because ultimately we are translating our operation control room from Koldam to Delhi. Although POSOCO has done it and everything is centralized in Manesar. But for us, it was a different scenario because this is the first time over MPLS we are trying to put our DCS network into a different location, which is almost 400 kilometers. But here I would like to mention one thing. The scenario is changing. There was a great deal of handling from our IT guys with our OT guys, and ultimately we had done it successfully, implementing all the securities of MPLS and ultimately forcing our DCS vendor not to give their actual DCS LAN into operation in Delhi. So that is altogether a different LAN. That is a proprietary protocol we will not share in this podium. However, the operation done in Delhi is on a different LAN than the actual industrial control center LAN in Koldam. So this is a new kind of stuff. So if evolution is there, and recently, as to the second part of the question, where we are lagging, what we are thinking of lagging is we are not getting into the nitty-gritties of the application firmware software written into our PLCs, SCADA controllers or our DCS controllers. And today's world, as you have said, 90% of the things are coming from outside world into India. So we are not sure whether there is certain malware planted already into that firmware. For that, we have gone for a collaboration with IIT Kanpur in their C3I lab, and we want a collaborative environment where we are well experienced in the DCS environment. We want their help into the application part of it. So let them study the application part of the DCS and tell us if there is any shortcoming in that one. So that part we are working on. Shortly this MOU will happen with IIT Kanpur. And the other part that we are telling is definitely there should be a lot more awareness into our people working, because this is a legacy system with a huge life of 40 years and ever changing stringent regulations from the government. To survive in that environment with the legacy system, we have to keep ourselves updated. Like he was talking about Microsoft patches. Microsoft patches in a normal IT environment, patch come, you load it, done. I am partially secured. But this is not true for an ICS. If the patch comes, we have to give it to the DCS vendor. He will validate, okay, putting this patch will not affect my ICS operation. It takes time. Minimum 6 to 7 months. So there is always a lag in the cycle, and somebody might take a benefit of that lapse as far as the zero-day vulnerabilities are concerned, because without validation we cannot just put a patch. And one of the important things we are religiously trying to do is, we are trying to move from antivirus environment to a whitelisting environment, because we found that there are a lot of unnecessary services running along with the DCS which need not run with the DCS. So we are trying to move from an antivirus situation to a whitelisting situation.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot, Tom. So I think I'll not ask the same question from Mr. Burman, because then a lot of secrets of a lot of companies will come out. But I have a different question for you.
It's very unfair. Eh?
I can ask him to talk about you guys. No, I'm also being a little mindful of the time. So the question I have is now, so that we talked a little bit about threat perception. We talked about what we have done, what has worked, what has not worked. Now let's look forward. Let's look to the future, right? What needs to happen, right? What all do we need to do? I think you are sitting right in the middle of it from a government perspective. How does the community need to come together? What steps need to happen? From multiple angles, right? Obviously, whatever you are doing in your world from the government angle, what do we have to do as the community, both large corporations as well as vendors like me, I'm part of the vendor community. And perhaps we'll do a round of that. And then towards the end, I would love to hear your thoughts as to what is the message to the young people out here, lots and lots of them, who are trying to get into this space. So maybe that's the next question. But for now, the first part of the question.
All right. So let's put it this way. The government essentially in this space is an enabler. We will put together an ecosystem, we'll put together a framework, and it is up to the others, up to the industry majors, up to the vendors, up to the students or the others in the security community to come together, gel on this platform, contribute to it. Like, for example, if you have noticed there's been a breach, or if you've noticed that a particular system has been compromised on a particular protocol, talk to us. We have no problems if you tell us post-breach, you tell us post-mitigation. Talk to us so that we can talk to the rest of the ecosystem and tell them, look out on this. Right? That's part A. Part B, as far as CII is concerned, we need to have a very clear-eyed view of the gap between IT and OT. Like he brought out, IT works. But IT and OT, if they are opaque to each other, there's a huge problem. If you take a very simplistic example, that of a particular controller reacts in nanoseconds, and by putting a firewall, the traffic going through has a delay of microseconds. The latency. My system will crash. So we need to have a very clear and present understanding, and let us not have a view that info security or cyber security in this particular thing is about IT. It's not. The OT guys give a damn about IT. The point he brought out was, look, if you're going to make it difficult for me to work, I don't need you, I'll go elsewhere. So the point I'm trying to again stress here is we understand this, right? We put in place a set of controls. We are putting in place our IR, our RVDP, which I spoke about in the earlier session. And essentially we're telling you that through people like us, the government is reaching out with a very clear message. We are here. Talk to us. Take our advice, take our support, and integrate with us. Because it's not a one-man job. We have to do it together. Right? And the last point is about the youngsters and the students and everybody else. Basically, it's your age. It's up to you. Because let's have a very real understanding. There was a time when there was a huge demand for the InfoSec professionals, the IT guys. Then it morphed into the security professionals. But who today is amongst the youngsters is looking at having done something in IT, having done something in security, is now looking at the OT, who's working on PLCs, who's working on SCADA, and trying to secure it. There is huge scope for this. And we need people to be working on this. If you aren't working on this, friend, you're missing the bus. We have enough of all those fancy certifications. CISP and all, they're good, they're required. I'm not trying to underplay them. But they're not sufficient in today's ecosystem. Let's move beyond that. Let's understand where the problems are and let's fix it. And again, at the cost of repeating myself, I just want to re-emphasize, we are listening to you. We are waiting for you to reach out to us. So if there is a problem, talk to us. You will get a response. One quick point. Very often I get feedback, कि sir, हमने आपको RVDP का कुछ बताया था या we reported something to you and we've not seen it get closed. And I wanted it closed in 24 hours or 72 hours. आपने कुछ नहीं किया. So I'm now releasing it to media. Go ahead. Release it. But understand that fixing a basic systemic problem takes time. You have to first make the organization involved aware of the problem. He has to accept the problem. He has to own it. And then he has to fix it. Right? So it's a huge elephant. We are trying to get it onto its feet and then we are trying to get it to walk. And we are very clear that we cannot do it alone.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So, I would love to hear your views also on the same topic.
Let me put it in this way. All the latest state-of-the-art firewalls, stateful firewalls in NFGWs, how many of them talk about Modbus? How many of them talk about OPC, the services, the protocols, the proxies to be opened for them? Till now, we think that the thrust has not shifted from a normal IT protocol services to the OT protocol services. Modbus is considered one of the most vulnerable protocol being used in OT. But there is no secured, very little, if at all, very little secured network devices to stop that thing. So we have to give a thrust, as Sarah has rightly put, the latency part. See, we are using IPS, intrusion protection system, but the moment we are using it into our DCS system, it becomes an IDS because I don't want to lose on my latency point. So it is a detection system. Although I am using latest state of the signatures, and ultimately at the end of the day, if I go for putting very strict and stringent rulings into those firewalls, I will find that at some point of time, because of the proprietary protocols and the unknown ports talking, I have to enable one point, any other protocol. That kills it. That kills the entire struggle to it. The next part I will come is the security policies are placed. They are very well defined. But what about the security audits? The VAPT, pen testing. Pen testing in today's world is necessary. All people are IT guys. Nobody even understand how the OT works, what latency can do to them, what is the criticality. We are talking about a turbine where the governing should work in 500 milliseconds. So here confidentiality is not important. Here importance is availability. So there is generally a thrust. So I think sir is already aware. We are simply pushing for auditors who will be well trained and ready for OT auditing. Enough of IT pen testing. And the third part is that more and more this IT and OT handshaking takes place, as it is happening to a certain extent for the digitalization initiatives and IIoTs. It should be more open and people should work jointly and understand each other's idea. IT people should give idea to the OT guys how to work and implement those systems into their places. And as far as the vendors are concerned, I think Saurabh would appreciate this part, that the vendors should also come up with completely secured OT devices. Let it be a 2-port firewall, let it be anything else, but that should be a completely secured device as far as the NUG-SIP or as far as the IEC 62443-2-4 is concerned, so that the OT vendor already feels comfortable. Okay, I am using the basic device. Now I have to implement the on-site protections onto it. So this transition needs to take place on this one. And for the students, I can only say that I think you people are very advanced in IT security. You people know a lot of coding, which we don't know. But you have to understand the industry protocols. The industry protocols works in a different way. And ultimately, as rightly been said, that critical information infrastructures will be the most targeted one in the near future. So until and unless we understand those protocols, think of it and make a sea change, a paradigm shift. That is a huge scope for the students, upcoming students, to work on. Like one of the aspects I would like to say is that in NTPC we have our IT SOC, but intentionally we have not prepared a SOC, a centralized SOC for our ICS. Why? Because we want to keep it air gapped. We have small SOC in our individual fleets, but we have never connected them together to form a centralized SOC, just with the point of air gapping it. So you people try to think of AI, ML, whatsoever it is, and understanding like a SIEM in the IT scenario for the OT scenario. That's what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good points. Sudarshan?
Yeah, so I mean, just to confront him on one point, I think the pen testing which we do not do on the OT system or the PLCs, there is a reason for it. It's not necessary, and even necessary, I'll be very scared, because I believe most of these devices or most of these OT devices, especially in our side of the world, can be life-threatening. If something goes wrong, and I'm a pen tester, I do not know what and pen testing usually does not happen in a curtailed environment. And these are all legacy systems which probably our grandparents have created, and we are not aware of a lot of things. There's no KT which is done. So you touch something goes wrong, it can have a cascading effect, boom, you can lose a city. And that's a reality. So I would be very cautious even for running a tool.
Sundar, if you just allow me, I will take only 1 minute. I need to clarify your point. As far as the pen testing I was talking about, I was not talking about the pen testing on the controllers. I was talking about the pen testing on the network devices attached to the controllers. And for the controllers, I had told in my just some minutes back that we are thinking of an environment of digital signatured firmware and application software into these controllers, so that the entire onus is on the DCS or ICS vendor, that yes, it is malware free.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, so I thought I'll just clarify on that. Fair enough. The other thing I think is that re-looking at the legacy environment and recreating it might be too, if not efficient, it would be too expensive and too time consuming. So I would think that why not create a boxed environment where you put them in a secure area and you create a fort around it and then say, okay, these are secure and we will phase it out over a period of time. That's the way I would look at it, which would be more feasible and more faster. I think the others, I concur to whatever they say. The part from a vendor perspective, I think there is a lot of expectation from my side from a vendor perspective. it would be that, we do not have a lot of OT securing devices. Now, yes, Modbus is one of the most vulnerable, but you had TCP/IP, which was the most vulnerable, and we evolved over a period of time. So I think creating a device which can give me a box where I can put this in and say, okay, to a certain level, I have an assurance that, there are defenses in place and it will take someone to get in there as time, and then I can trace it or pull the plug out in time. So that is something which I might be looking at. I think from a vendor perspective, also educating people or looking at the OT side itself or the PLC side itself and creating a blue ocean at that point, at that area, which is not explored as of today, would be an interesting thing to see. And these are all futuristic talks. So I do not know if this comes out, but I think this is something which would be very interesting for me to see. From the community, students or non-students, I think security should be ingrained to us. It is, I usually say this, it is as simple as that how many of you have cell phones which are not password protected, and how many of you have cell phones which your even spouse or your children know the passwords of it, right? And it's not, I don't want anyone to answer, but the way I look at it is something like, we understand the vitality of the data. We understand why the data is very important. It might be something which a child can't see. It might be something which my office thing is, and I don't want my wife to know because she'll get stressed out. It need not have to be the funny side of it, what we think. And bringing back to your funny side of it, like, it's not the girlfriend or it's not the porn what you have on your phone, but it's actually the sensitivity of the data which you're carrying, and it might affect your work or someone else's work. Now, having said that, I think why don't we look at our office work like that? And it's a very famous saying of Vivekananda, I think, at some point in time, and he said, if the country remains, I remain, right? So the country comes first, or your work comes first. If the job is there, if your company is there, then you remain in job. So you need to protect that data with utmost sincerity compared to anything else. So I think that is what you need to devise and ingrain in your own self. How do you do it? What do you do? At any point in time, you're conscious about it. Trust me, you will be breached someday or the other, and it's good. The faster you get there, it's better because you learn from there and you learn better from there. So that's all my ask would be actually.
But before that, look, let's re-emphasize what the seriousness of what we're talking about. When he says that a plant gets breached, it's part of the country which is cut off. He says the city is out. Each one of these examples leads to a national emergency. That's the seriousness of what we're talking about. And that is the seriousness what the youngsters have to understand. That it's not about a company. It's about us as a nation. And we have to work towards securing that. And we have to work, just 30 seconds. We have to work towards securing that